In early 1995, there were two arcade games that were created to be the show ponies for the upcoming Ultra 64 machine. One of them was the pretty craptastic Cruisin' USA, and the other one was Killer Instinct. I can remember looking at the arcade machine and imagining Ultra 64 games all looking that good. As it turns out, no Nintendo 64 games looked as good as this, but that's another story. Since the home machine got delayed a couple of times and Rare was sitting on a new property with nothing to do with it, it was decided that they'd port the game to the Super Nintendo. Many people, myself included, scoffed at that notion. Donkey Kong Country was great, but you could not dumb this down into 16 bits. Well, they did it anyway. The main difference, apart from lacking some colours and animation frames, is that the game no longer had a zoom-in camera. Not a deal breaker. The majority of the game made the transition intact, amazingly. And it came on a black cartridge. Totally edgy, man. The quality of the voice samples was bumped right down. But the music is still pretty awesome. The game itself is like the love child of Street Fighter and Mortal Kombat with a high-tech futuristic theme going on. The moves are almost 100% Street Fighter style, but it's a bit more brutal with Mortal Kombat like blood and fatalities. The most hilarious fatality, of course, was where Orchid, the token female, flashed her boobs at the opponent and they fell to the ground dead. I know it sounds stupid, but my friends and I used to have lengthy discussions about what was actually under that tight-fitting jumpsuit that could have that kind of effect. You could also do fatalities that knocked the player out of the ring entirely, which was cool. So anyone who'd played Street Fighter 2 before this could jump in and experience some success, but you could not beat this game unless you figured out how to do combos. I was never really that much good at them, but have a look on YouTube and see some of the Killer Instinct masters at work. It's crazy stuff. In that sense, Killer Instinct carved itself a niche as a hardcore gamer's game. Only the elite would be able to pull off the ultra combos, leaving the noobs in the dust. How does Killer Instinct survive today when it doesn't have the visual wow factor? Quite well, really. The gameplay doesn't feel quite as tight as Street Fighter, but it's definitely one of the better alternatives. Probably the best alternative, actually. It's got a good cast of fighters and lots of secrets to discover. Yeah, I reckon it stands. Of course, it was inevitable that Capcom would make a sequel to Mega Man X, but I for one was super excited when I heard that X2 was coming. I can remember renting it from a local video store and just playing it all night. It's interesting, it was released in the PAL regions by a distributor called Laguna Games. I think it was a German company. Anyway, it doesn't exist anymore. But it was responsible for the very limited PAL releases of Mega Man 7, 8, X2 and X3. So, anyway, Mega Man X2 had been pumped up by Capcom as showing off an amazing new graphics chip that would supposedly give unparalleled awesomeness in the game's graphics. Only thing is, yeah, it looks practically identical to the first game. Turns out the Capcom C4 chip did vector polygon style graphics like this. Ooh, gee, wow. Amazing stuff. Look at that. Capcom really shouldn't have been making such a big deal out of it because it made them look dumb when everyone saw the wireframe graphics and didn't really care. Thankfully, the rest of the game is pretty much a continuation of what we got in Mega Man X1, which is awesome. X still collects heart pieces to increase his health, finds Dr. Light's hidden capsules to upgrade his armour, and it's also worth collecting the 4 sub-tanks in case of emergencies. The main difference in X2 is the new antagonists, the X-Hunters, 3 super tough robot warriors that have made it their mission to resurrect Sigma. They appear after 2 bosses have been beaten and position themselves randomly throughout the main levels. They are entirely optional, however if you beat all 3 of them you can resurrect Zero later on. Remember, he was apparently destroyed by Vile in the previous game. If you choose not to beat the X-Hunters, they will resurrect Zero and you have to fight him near the end. So here's the latest crew. Why a sponge? I suppose a sponge is technically an animal, isn't it? Anyway, this strange creature is in a strange level where the weather is constantly changing. Morph Moth hangs out in the junkyard. He's an interesting boss that spends the first half of the battle in a cocoon. Flame Stag is found in an erupting volcano. Look at him. He's just too cool. Hot. Magna Centipede's level has security searchlights that are out to detect any Maverick Hunter presence. He's also into magnets and he likes standing on the ceiling. Overdrive Ostrich has a desert level where you can ride a jet bike and you end up stopping a rocket from launching. Crazy. Bubble Crab is the token underwater level. For some really weird reason, the music from this level was reused for the tidal whale stage in Mega Man X5. It's the only time Capcom's ever done this, and it's baffling to say the least. Wheel Gator is a coward. He likes to hide in the mud for most of his battle. His level takes place on a gigantic tank that's rolling its way through the city streets. Lucky last is the Crystal Snail, whose level takes place in a shimmering crystal mine. For some bizarre reason, Capcom made the explosions in this game blue, and they last longer than they used to. No idea why. Bit excessive, don't you think? One cool thing is that you don't need to spend ages wandering around to fill up your energy tanks. If you find the hidden area and use a charged up silk shot, ba-bam! Oh, makes life so much easier. And like the hidden Hadouken from the first game, X can get himself a Dragon Punch in X2, but it's much more difficult to get. It's painful. It's found almost at the end of the game. It's harder to pull off than the Hadouken, and probably not as useful. Still, it's cool that it's in there, and one-hit kills are always fun on big bosses. I would say the music's not as good as the first game, and it's more difficult. This bit still drives me crazy. But I really like X2, probably just about as much as the original. You can stand up, X. I've got to say, this is the first and only time I'm playing a game this year that technically doesn't even exist. Starfox 2 was created, finished, and never released. It was supposed to be put on shelves sometime in the middle of '95, but it just never was. It just disappeared. Word in hindsight is that Miyamoto decided at the last minute that Super Nintendo 3D wasn't something that he wanted to do anymore. The 64 was nearing launch, the 3DO, PlayStation and Saturn were all out there displaying far superior 3D graphics, and Star Fox just didn't have that wow factor it was supposed to have. So the game, for all intents and purposes completed, was thrown away. But it wasn't, see. There's some sneaky buggers out there, and the code was taken from somewhere in Nintendo's archives and made public on the internet as an emulated ROM. Legal? Probably not. Awesome? You betcha. Now it's even been patched into English so you can play the game as if it's a genuine release. It would have been awesome if Nintendo had put this on the Virtual Console. But they don't seem that cool these days. The thing that I found most shocking about Star Fox 2 when I finally played it is that it's a completely different style of game to the first one. The old team of Fox, Falco, Slippy and Peppy has been reassembled with two new members that haven't been heard of since, Mia and Faye. They're the token fast and weak characters. Peppy and Slippy are the slow and safe characters, and Fox and Falco are balanced. You actually get to choose two characters to be on your team, and the rest apparently just sit back and watch. So here's the map screen. You see it a lot in this game. Gone are the multiple straight paths to Venom. The world map now plays like a kind of real-time strategy game with missiles coming in for attack on your home planet Corneria. They all need to be stopped, but you have to balance this with attack missions as well. This shake-up of the game system gives Star Fox 2 a very different feeling to its predecessor, and its successor as well. This style of gameplay would actually be copied years later with Star Fox Command on DS. Personally, I prefer the more straightforward gameplay, but I'm willing to give this a go. First thing you notice once you get in the cockpit of your R-Wing is that the game is no longer on rails. It's all range mode for pretty much the whole game. When you have a skirmish in space, it's just a matter of looking at your map to see where the enemies are, tracking them down, locking on, then just shooting a charge shot to get rid of them. I was intrigued at how simplistic these battles are. You just need to get them done in the shortest time possible so that you can get back to defending your planet. If you take too long in any mission, stuff will be happening behind the scenes, and General Pepper will start screaming at you that Corneria is under fire. Well, I'm sorry, General, I'm kinda busy. All the other 4 members of the team, they're apparently not doing anything at the moment. There's no backup members this time around. The second character is purely there as a swap in and out guy, and the others don't enter into the story at all, so team is a strong word in Star Fox 2. So yeah, this isn't a game for the anxious. Every mission you do, whether it's just shooting down a rocket or liberating a planet, is timed, counting down the moments until Corneria's doom. No pressure. On this, my first playthrough of the game, I was in a real state of panic for some of it. With these new free-range levels where you have to figure out which enemies to kill and which buttons to press before you can progress, you inevitably need time, but you don't have time. I don't think this game's good for my blood pressure. When you reach an interior level, whether it's inside a shuttle or under a planet's surface, it becomes like a dungeon. Here you can transform the R-Wing into a walker, a la Vortex. I hated this to start with. The controls instantly change and you have to use L and R to rotate around. I have to admit, I got a lot better at working the walker the more I played, but it feels a bit awkward and not as polished as the rest of the game. Nowhere near as bad as Vortex though. You know, apart from the pressure of leaving Corneria unguarded, Star Fox 2 is a heck of a lot easier than Star Fox 1. None of the levels or bosses posed a threat to me, and I was playing on the supposed hard setting. I didn't get game over once, although by the time I'd finished, 78% of Corneria had been bombed. Oops. I don't know, it also feels pretty insubstantial compared to its prequel. The first game had heaps of full levels, each one with a new challenge and unique boss. Star Fox 2 only has a handful of real levels, which basically consist of very similar dungeon challenges and practically identical, and very easy, bosses. Apart from that, it's just the space skirmishes and that's about it. This game had the introduction of the Star Wolf team as well. It's funny, when I first played Star Fox 64 and the Star Wolf team came into it, I remember thinking that perhaps I was supposed to know who these characters were, even though they'd never been seen before. Well, turns out that wasn't their first appearance. Wolf and his team made their debut in Star Fox 2. I like how Fox's surname is MacLeod and Wolf's is O'Donnell, so one is Scottish and one is Irish. Nice. As you can probably see, the 3D graphics were improved from the first game thanks to the upgraded version of the Super FX chip. It's all still very basic, but it's got a nice clean and crisp look that holds together most of the time. Star Fox 2 is a very strange beast. It looks like Star Fox 1, it sounds like Star Fox 1, but it doesn't feel like it at all. It's a panic-inducing defense strategy game at heart, and while I definitely applaud the team for creating something really different, there's no doubt in my mind that the original game was better, and they definitely did the right thing using it as a template for Star Fox 64. Having said that, Star Fox 2 is a well-made game and I enjoy playing it. It's 1,000 times better than Vortex, that's for sure. And the nature of the game means that every time you play it, you get a slightly different experience. So, yep, I'll say it stands. The clock is ticking. 10 episodes to go. And speaking of clocks, next week I'm playing that Square game that dared to stand out from the crowd. Catch it on the Chronostream, time jockeys. Peace out.